Hello, everyone. Welcome in the next episode of Kardamom and Chili. We both, me and Heike, are really excited because we are bringing you something very special, or I should say someone very special. Heike, over to you.
Hello, nice to have you back. And I am so chuffed that we have a guest today, which is the fabulous Tom Cleary. Tom, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, both. Thank you. I've got to say, before we started recording, that was the most funny and enjoyable intro to a podcast I've ever had. So it's a beautiful teamwork and dynamic that you both have with this. So thank you for inviting me on. Yep, I'm Tom. My background is varied, but my focus is on mental health and well-being, especially social well-being, and topics like introversion and self-compassion. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
And that's exactly why we chose you as our first guest, because introversion is obviously a big topic for us. We speak about it a lot. We had episode 3, I think, about it. Maybe.
Some of the episodes, plus we nicely put things in between.
Yeah. And you have created a beautiful, wonderful community for introverts and those who do not label like this, and extroverts who want to support us, who want to understand us better. And as we are all three introverts, why did extroverts step in there? That was
I guess probably that's my fault.
Why is it your fault?
It's my fault because I do not appear as the obvious introvert.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why.
I'm not sure any of us do, actually. I think I think we've all had times from what I've heard from Heike, and especially I know for me, where we are told quite forcefully sometimes that you can't possibly be an introvert because you do, and they'll add in various things which aren't true. So I get the kind of confusion that happens with that sometimes.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's actually I guess what it is. And I think it's even more important to talk about self-compassion for introverts in that matter, isn't it?
It is. It's for me. It's combining sort of my favorite topics that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So introversion clearly a really big thing for me, and self-compassion is right up there as well, because it's something which for myself I've learned the hard way. I went through a huge burnout about, I think, 8 years ago now. I lose track of time, which in hindsight was very much due to a lack of self-compassion, kindness to other people, great, not to myself. And as I've worked with more and more people who are more introverted, there are lots of links coming up between those two topics.
How do you define self-compassion for an introvert? Because it is different for us. The needs that we have in terms of seclusion sometimes, of withdrawal and all these things. How do you define or explain self-compassion in an introverted world?
It's a really good question, because I think people have a hard enough time sometimes with the concept of self-compassion anyway. And when we add the layering on of introversion and certain needs that we might have as part of that world, it does become harder. So the sort of most common definition of self-compassion as it is mindful awareness, so being aware of what we're actually going through and experiencing. Self-kindness, so treating ourselves the way we treat the people who we are very close to and who we care about, and then shared human connection. And in that last bit, the bit about when we are struggling, if something's going wrong, the natural human tendency is to pull away from people. And the research says to move towards people and to share and actually embrace failure as part of being human. That can have an extra difficulty for people who, if they are introverted, actually like to have their own time and space and might connect differently. So that's the bit quite often, or one of the key bits, where there's a bit of a challenge sometimes for people who are more introverted.
Yeah. Vera is nodding. I'm nodding because can I share it? Just because it just happened. We both had a phase of going through stuff. And once again, and we are working on this, we did not talk. I withdrew, and Tom knows this already, I withdrew into my gaming world because I needed to figure stuff out. I withdrew completely and discovered in the end something. And Vera went into her own coping mechanisms and we did not talk. And then once we had, I think it was when we recorded episode 5, we talked a little bit, and then both we realized, damn, we didn't talk again. We would have just needed to connect and just speak about it, especially as we are friends. We are going through the same stuff as business owners. We are at a similar level of development at the moment. And yeah, that's one of the things I think I need to learn, this part of self-compassion, that I need to reach out even though I don't want to. So or this introverted part says, no, I don't want to see people, but it actually helps. Each time when I talk with Vera, it's like, okay, maybe I should have done this before, because then I would have had this epiphany 2 weeks earlier.
It's speeding up. It's speeding up process, I think. I believe that it does. But exactly, because you, Tom, you are more experienced. And I'm sure that you've talked and helped so many people with this. What would be your advice for people who are struggling, and how to set the boundaries, or how to communicate what you need to others, or even to acknowledge yourselves that, okay, I need that?
It's a lovely question, because it's something which I've had to work on myself over the years a lot. Definitely. It's that balancing act between, are we taking ourselves into our own space because we are needing that and needing to recharge? Or are we doing that because we are wanting to pull away from failure and not show our vulnerability? And there are two different parts of that. And the first part is recognizing, why am I doing this pulling back part? There's nothing wrong with pulling back as somebody who needs their own space to recharge and reconnect with themselves, their own values. But often there's a point where it goes beyond that, and we're now pulling back when actually we could do with reaching out to a close friend or a close contact. But we think, do you know what? I don't feel that I'm either worthy of this, or I don't want people to know that I've failed at something, or that I'm really struggling with something, which, especially as business owners, our businesses can become so personal to us that a business failure can become a personal failure. So awareness of that is the first step. But then also, I'll mention two more things, if that's okay. And please shut me up if I talk too much.
Not at all.
Thinking about ways of communicating. Many of my introvert clients, they will communicate better in that pace through writing, because they have their own thoughts. They can write something down. They can express what they mean and refine that, and then message or email a close friend. So it's a different way of doing that. And then also in my life, I have people who know me really well, who, if they think I'm withdrawing a little bit too much and maybe the reasons are not recharging, they'll call me out on it. They will say, just checking in, are you pulling back and being quiet because you need to recharge, or are you doing that because you're in protective mode? And actually, if you're in that one, let's have a chat. So that's a few bits that I do for myself.
I guess that's the main thing, to be honest and communicate with others, and really have this few people around you that you trust and you can ask, or they will check upon you, isn't it?
And communicate with yourself, actually, because that's I love this so much. At the moment, everything is kind of in a flow, because I discovered 2 limiting beliefs in just 3 days. And the reason behind one of them was that I suddenly hit an upper limit. I suddenly had success, and then this is scary for the brain because it's something new. The brain wants to keep us safe. And so for 2 weeks, I ventured down into my Skyrim gaming world and pretended to an extent that it was my introvert, because I really had a lot of calls and I was exhausted and overwhelmed. But then I figured, well, I came to the conclusion of one of the root causes why I am retracting like this, why I am withdrawing from everything. And of course, there was other stuff going on. But this time I took basically my introversion as an excuse, unknowingly, for a while, or I had the feeling that there's something more, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And when I did that in the past, I struggled to come out of it at all. So I needed to realize what's going on. And this time it took just the 2 weeks and finally talking to someone. So it's very much a process that lies within, and how honest you can be with yourself and how much you observe yourself with your patterns that you use. And, like when we're stressed and then crisp eating excessively or chocolate eating excessively, patterns like those. When we realize and acknowledge them, we can then tackle what's underlying. And I'm working on the limiting belief now, once again, so that this time my business model will not fail, that I can go on and succeed, because this is what I want. And it's so fascinating how much, for me, the introversion kicked in, plus using it unconsciously as an excuse to withdraw, to run away from this problem, basically, that then was uncovered.
I might add something in which I think is relevant to that, Heike. This is where the self-compassion comes in really strongly, because some of our habits and our patterns, which make us feel in the short term, we feel better, are often not what we need to do longer term. And a lot of people think that self-compassion is about self-pity, getting away with things, just doing whatever we want to feel better. And I often compare it to if you see a very compassionate parent with their child, it's not one that goes, you can have whatever you want, you can eat whatever you want, you can stay up until 3 a.m. and just live on crisps and ice cream. It's someone going, well, there are times when, yeah, we can have these things, but actually I want you as a parent to do really well, to thrive, to maybe do things which you don't want to do because it's in your best interest long term. And when we turn self-compassion, that compassion for ourselves, we also go, okay, maybe I do need to have an evening where I'm doing those things which in the short term make me feel better. But then I think, okay, what do I need in order to thrive in the long term? And that's for me been a real game changer in terms of when introversion stops becoming something useful to me and actually hinders me. So just becoming aware of there are times where I need to do things which actually I might not want to do, which might be uncomfortable, is part of self-compassion, which makes it quite a hard thing to do, but has some really big effects when we do actually tap into that.
Love that. Love that. And actually, I've watched some Oprah Winfrey interview recently and get inspired really, because that's what she says, and love it. Check with yourself, what is your intention behind your action? And then if you're honest with yourself, you will know. So basically, I'm doing that because I'm hiding and I'm using my introversion as excuse, or I'm doing it because at this moment, that's my self-compassion. So intention changes things, or self-awareness changes.
That bit you said at the end, Vera, is so important, because I have a lot of clients coming to me who want to work on intention, and we can't do that until we have that self-awareness. And that's why one of the building blocks of self-compassion is mindful self-awareness. So are we aware of the way that we are treating ourselves? Normally, it's so automatic that we are not. We have this critical voice, we have a way of speaking to ourselves, which is so part of our daily life. It's going on without us realizing it. Even a kind of scream of how awful you are at something isn't registered consciously because it's so part of our makeup. So becoming aware of that, and the mindful part is becoming aware of that without being attached and without judging ourselves. So not going, oh, I'm aware I'm doing this, and aren't I a bad person for not being good enough to do these things or treat myself a certain way? It's okay. This is what I'm doing. I'm not judging myself or the situation. This just is. This is my kind of foundation of being very honest with myself and being very truthful, but not minimizing or enlarging what's happening. I'm starting from an awareness without judging myself for that. It's such a big part people tend to miss out. And instead, what I've seen people do countless times is beat themselves up for not being self-compassionate enough. It becomes another thing to add to their list of, oh, do you know what? Yep, I failed at that too. And it's ridiculous. It's like, we're trying to do the opposite, and people will find another reason to make themselves feel worse.
It's like, prove myself right. Whatever I do, I'll make sure that I'm right.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm laughing because we were constantly nodding along, Vera and I, because it's like, yeah, oh my God, we know this so well.
What I really enjoy about, our conversation, Tom, today, it's that you pointing out so obvious things for us but I'm sure that there are as many people who will never really acknowledge those things. And statistics says that actually small business owners are mostly introverts. So how many people are really struggling simply because they not really acknowledge who they are and what they need to do to succeed? It's fascinating.
It's a huge one, and there's a double thing happening here where we have business owners who are introverts who in some ways may struggle with self-compassion. There is some research to show that because of some of the traits that are linked to introversion, so inward looking, and focus on an inner world, can often be much more self-critical. So we are worse sometimes at being self-compassionate. But also the idea that as a society, we've been brought up to think that being kind to ourselves is showing weakness or being selfish or getting away with things, and that we have to kind of always graft and push and go to our limits every day in order to succeed. The research doesn't support it, but society enhances this. So we have so many business owners that I talk to or I work with who are saying, even if they know they should be doing certain things, they have that block of introversion about, but my critical voice is saying that you're getting away with things, you're being too soft on yourself. And my friends and partner are going, well, do you know what? You should work harder and you should be putting more effort into marketing and doing this. And, and then they feel so exhausted that there's no room left for self-care. And it's a sad thing I see quite a lot at the moment.
It's fascinating that our society is actually so twisted. I know it's harsh and it's blunt, but how can it be that when we have a partner, when we have a child, when we have a pet, we are so loving towards them. We are so supporting usually. And we give them all that they need so they can grow and thrive and strive to whatever they want to achieve. And to ourselves, we listen to those, you need to work hard, you need to be this, an introvert is always shy, all these horrible, horrible labels that we are being given under the label of introversion, and so many other labels. So it's fascinating how we try our best to be our best, and then we still listen so much to others, and especially the negative talk. I know it's normal thing in the brain that we do that because it derives from survival mechanisms and all these things 10,000 of years ago. As we said just in the last episode, there is no saber-toothed cat anymore. Nothing
It's us.
It's
that's the problem. The saber-toothed tiger, whatever that was out there, which was external, is now internal. And so all of our attack mechanisms that we've honed over thousands of years, which I know that you've mentioned before, Heike and Vera, that inner attack is where it comes from and why it's so comfortable for us to attack ourselves, because we're used to that process, but it's just gone the wrong direction now, and we haven't caught that bit so much.
Yeah.
There's another thing which I really like and came from that conversation, because actually we have in the room 3 different nations.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this work hard ethos of society, and we all 3 nodded. And I really never noticed that. Well, I know about Polish people because we apparently working hard and we are proud. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, and Germans live for their work.
So that is another interesting thing which show up here. We are the society, like it's bigger than nations. It's quite interesting.
I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it, Vera. So it's such an interesting observation. And it is, I think of it from my upbringing and the language that we use, such as grin and bear it, stiff upper lip. And it's baked into our language in schooling systems, in mentors, in parenting. But the fact that it ripples out far beyond that experience into different countries, different nations, it's such a good spot. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That's my linguistic background. I'm kind of fascinated with languages. And I actually was about to do my PhD regarding relation between languages and psychology and how we present ourselves. But then I moved to Scotland, so Never happened.
No, please do that, because I will read every single bit of what you write, because I have a genuine love of that, but I have no one who's researching it that I know. So please, Vera, please go back and do that.
Oh. See, well, interesting. I generally believe, and that's why actually our friendship with Heike really started back to the day when we were laughing at each other, because that's a really unusual Polish-German friendship in Scotland. And that made us laugh because yeah, historically it's, not necessarily the best friendship.
Germans and Polish, or at least in our generation and before, we always had a difficult relationship, because Germans see the Polish always as the thieves and the betrayers and very bad prejudices. And as being German and having grown up in this kind of thing, then becoming such great friends with the Polish, I have the theory that is only possible because we are both in Scotland.
I really don't think so, but that's, we drive nicely from self-compassion. But the truth is, and that's what I'm trying to say here, that it doesn't really matter, because we are, as a human beings, very, 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 very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And our basics, desires and passions are really, really similar. But what society put on us and our imagine what we're supposed to do or who we're supposed to be are so far away of who we are that causes trouble. And that's why we really need to retrain ourselves and be self-aware and self-compassionate.
While you were saying that, Vera, I was also thinking that there's a huge similarity between the way that we ascribe certain qualities to nationalities and the way that we ascribe certain qualities to introverts and extroverts. And we often lean very heavily into the negatives. We can have a negative bias where if we do meet, for example, an introvert who fulfills all the things society says are bad or negative, and they go, well, I told you that's what they're like. And we maybe ignore the 50 people we've met in the same time period who actually have all the positive qualities of introversion, which a lot of definitions tend to ignore. And it's really interesting how Heike and I have had many conversations on labels, how sometimes labels can be so useful and so powerful, and sometimes they can be so restrictive, and they can be a real cause of harm. And I hadn't thought about it in the same way that you've just drawn that parallel. That's really lovely to hear. I mean, not lovely, but it's thought-provoking to hear.
Useful.
Yes, thank you.
Useful. That's very nice sometimes. But yeah, lots of really interesting route and path we can get from here, and just starting with self-compassion, isn't it?
And all the other self-love, self-development, everything that where we should be focusing on ourselves more in a good way, so that we can become the best versions of ourselves and not just serve others.
Can I add to that, because it's something that came up recently, Heike? Because I agree, it's many people I work with they're really good at empathizing and supporting other people, not so good at doing the self bit. So the self-development, self-love, self-compassion, self-kindness, the bit people often link in with that group is selfish. That by doing those things we're being selfish. And actually the opposite is completely true. And it's a slight oddity about self-compassion that when we are self-compassionate, we are actually focused far more on other people and we turn more towards others. And the reason for that is if we are very self-critical, we look inwards a lot and we spend our time thinking about what we've done wrong, why we failed, why we haven't done this, how much we haven't done that, how much we should be doing so and so. It's all inward looking. With self-compassion, it's recognizing, okay, that went wrong, that was a failure. What's next? Okay, it's this bit. Let's move on. And our attention turns much more quickly into again being able to support other people as well as ourselves. So all the people come to me and saying, yeah, I love the idea about being kind to myself and having self-compassion, but it feels selfish. I haven't got time. I have people to care for. The research says you will have more time to support other people, more time to be a genuine friend or business owner who supports your clients and your colleagues if you show self-compassion than if you get stuck in that negative loop of self-criticism. And it's missed out from a lot of times people talk about this topic, I think.
So much true here. You can't pour from empty cup, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. And the selfish part is something, frankly, some of us need to learn it. I despise the definition that it has been given, because I was guilty of trying to be selfish, and was called selfish only because I did not attend to someone else's map of the world, that they wanted me to make them happy. They wanted me to entertain them. They wanted me to bloody, 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 blah. The selfish part, when you are a people pleaser and a people helper, you need to learn to be selfish. You need to embrace it so that you actually do not run into a burnout, that you do not run into depression or anything else that comes with it, because you are completely drained and exhausted and you can't anymore. And still someone draws from your cup, although there is already dust and sand in it, and still they scrape out the sand corns or whatever it's called. And people who are on this side of being, they need to be selfish. They need to learn how to be selfish. And that is, I think, a form of self-compassion as well, and self-love, because then, as you said, when you are all these things, you have much more energy. Time is much better distributed, and you have much more capability to help others because you helped yourself.
I think that goes back to Vera's point about language, and I've talked about labels before, where I think it depends what we mean by being selfish, because I agree with everything you've just said, except I would never use the word selfish in that context. And it's not to say that I think that's wrong. It's just a case of we all give different meanings to words.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I would agree with all of that. And I call it either self-care or self-protection or sort of boundary work. And I know a lot of people who, rightly or wrongly, because of the way that selfish has been defined and is used and is seen as a negative, that they have to shift the language in order to do all those same things that you've just been describing. Because it is so important that we look after ourselves, that we have boundaries, that we say no to people. And people don't always like either saying no or hearing no, but we need it. We need to be able to go, do you know what? Right now, I'm focusing on myself, because I can't do anything as a business owner, as a partner, as a friend, as anything, unless I am okay. Our self-care has to be that priority. So it's interesting, again, how we totally agree, Heike, on that aspect, and how language differs between what it means for different people as well.
Yeah, I second what Tom said. And exactly what you, Heike, described. It's not selfishness at all to me. And that's another linguistic conversation about the meaning behind the words and languages, and even when you speak the same language, what you really mean under the definition. But everything what you said, it's, to me, that would be self-care, not selfishness. And back to what Tom said before, I really, really liked definition of self-care. You said, just you should print it out and start, sending to people.
Again, I think a lot of people that probably are drawn to your lovely podcast is because they resonate with the two of you, who, from what I know so far, you're both very caring people and you want to help others. And the thing that can lead to is the opposite of self-compassion, which is either empathic fatigue. So we become so absorbed in the empathy that we get burnt out by that. And you can have compassion burnout as well, where we're giving so much of ourselves to others and we get lost within that. And we think, well, why am I struggling? Because I'm being a nice person and I'm showing the qualities, I'm living up to the values which are important to me. And I'm told that I should be kind and caring and considerate. And yet I feel exhausted and I feel detached from my job and I feel like I can't make decisions as a business owner. The number of people who come to me who have either empathic distress, fatigue, compassion, burnout, there's multiple, again, labels for it, but they've cared so much for others and become so invested in their clients' problems, especially those who are working in things like coaching, mentoring, therapy, etc. And they've missed out that turning it back on themselves and going, I need that care too. All these things I'm putting out, I know how to do them because I'm amazing at doing them with everyone else. The missing link is I haven't turned it back on myself yet. And I see it such a lot. And I also see when someone does switch it around and when they do start showing themselves self-compassion, the difference on their well-being, on their mental health, and on their business success, which are all interlinked, is phenomenal. And I shouldn't be amazed still because I've been doing it for years, but I am. I still watch people and go, wow, look at you a month ago compared to now, and how you're treating yourself and how your clients are responding, how your business is growing because of those things. But all those people listening who are, and you know who you are, who are amazing at supporting other people, please look after yourself. You are the most important person in your life.
Yeah.
And then you can help other people as well.
I love the part, you know who you are.
Not calling you out there.
Not calling out, but you know who you are. But no, absolutely, I agree. And I also love the part that like every little dance when you see people changing or when you see them smiling and when you see them, they grow. And again, that probably what put us together here, because that's about service. And that's about, doesn't matter what you do, you serve people somehow. At least I believe we do.
Yeah.
And that's never get old. You always will have this little dance when you see someone ready to go on their own path and succeed.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. They both nodding and smiling.
The thing is, it can be a little bit, and I don't use the word in its proper sense, but it can be a bit addictive. If we are people who one of our key or core values in life is to serve others, and I've had a really odd and varied career path, which is not useful right now. But the one thread across all of it, I've always said to myself is, have I helped someone today? And the look on someone's face, the boost in self-esteem, self-compassion, it's why I do what I do. But that is also the issue, because we want so badly to make that positive change for other people that we put all of our energy into doing that to make that difference. And that's very often the point where we end up starting to have a bit of burnout because it's all going one direction and we forget that we have to bring it back. And I keep repeating myself because it's such a big thing. We need to bring it back to ourselves and realize that as well as providing a service to others and supporting them, we have to feel worthy ourselves of doing that to us. And if we struggle, we create a network of people who help us with that. And it has to be a two-way street. Often the people I work with, they're amazing in one direction. They will give support, 24/7. But even if support is offered, they're like, oh, well, no, I'm okay. You if you've got time, you go and help someone else. I'm all right. But actually, we need to learn how to be open to receiving support and compassion. We're not always great at doing that.
Very true. Very true. I had a thought and the thought gone because we all dip in thoughts and we agreed with everything and we feel so...
That's the introvert thinking about it, like letting it sink in.
Yeah, we helped. We love them all. Yeah. But yeah, that's very true. But again, that is coming back to self-developing, self-compassion. Because, you go, you serve, you help people. And then that's up to them. They get what you give and they go and multiply. It's nothing to do with you. And I think when you came to that point, then you realize that you serve, you offer your value, you look after yourself after that and let them be and do with it whatever they like, then when you reach nice, sweet spot, that makes sense. Oh, yeah.
I agree with that. And I also found it really interesting when all three of us almost sort of moved back and were absorbing a point other people have made. And you said, Vera, that's the introvert in us. The idea that we have to think to speak rather than speaking in order to think is one of the key differences depending on how far up or down that scale you are on introversion, extroversion. And yet, if you're anything like me, there's also a discomfort of I'm not meant to be taking that time to process. So I'm meant to be continuously speaking. And yes, it's a podcast, but I wonder if sometimes we don't give gaps for the audience to do the same thing that we all felt a need to do. at that point.
That's quite cool, actually, because I felt guilty. And I remember when I thought someone, and that's the main key, someone said that you should. So someone said to me, okay, you need to go and do videos, and you need to do that, and you need to do that. And then again, as introverts, that's why I'm a photographer. I do like being the other side. I'm not really big fan of showing myself, although you wouldn't say now because I'm all over the place. But so someone said like, oh, your videos are boring. You're so slow. You need to speak up faster. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not good, really. But as you said, and that's the brilliant, I had to have a moment to think before I speak. And actually, that's a good value. That's a good quality.
But it's also something, and that is like, oh my God, there are so many techniques that you learn for speaking, in public speaking, when you do all the Toastmaster stuff, that you give pauses, breaks to the audience so they can digest what you just said and don't babble on and on and on and on and on. What I actually do myself at times, quite often. But there is this strategy, because every single human being, no matter if you're introvert, extrovert, non-label, whatever you define yourself as, our brain needs time to process. Some process things faster, some others take it slower, and that's just it. That's just how it is. And when you're in public speaking, you learn to put in intentional breaks and pauses so that people can gather their thoughts. So it's another thing that on one side, people try to do this, and on the other side, the society wants us to constantly talk. It's as I said, it's twisted.
Human beings are twisted. It's fine.
It's a challenging mix. And I was thinking, Vera, with what, because everybody obviously can't see me, I was grimacing while hearing you describing the feedback that you got. And I'm not saying that we always have to like feedback. Actually, I've been doing some sort of mini research into introversion and feedback and how we might respond differently in some ways. But what I heard from the story you shared just then was that person said, what I would prefer you to do, and in order to appeal to me and people like me, you should be doing all that. And if you want to appeal to people like that, they might have a point. But did they consider that there are different people out there who might be drawn to the style that you offer? If it is a slower pace, if it is more reflective, if it is gentler or quieter or whatever it is that they didn't like, did they leave any room for people might actually really love that and be put off by the style they are recommending? Not that one's right or wrong, but that different styles appeal to different people. And we rarely give space for differences with introversion, I think.
Yeah, I love it. And again, thanks for that. And that is come back to self-compassion as well, because that was my big lesson. And I was like, okay, wait a second, but I'm not this, sparkly unicorn girl with, really pinky dress on the fields, jumping with the camera and spreading rainbows. By the way, I do love rainbows and glitter. I'm never gonna be like that. I'm a girl with a hoodie and jeans and more focused on get something from person. So my style of creating photography and experience for people is different. But exactly as you said, these people are my people. Those who like less sparkle and glitter and more nicely guidance, as you would. And that was because I took it and I had a moment of, anger, then annoyance, and then self-compassion. It gave me the insight that that's the only way. The only way to be successful is to be me and to use what I've got in my advantage. That's when my, brand developed. And that is my brand. I am my brand. You are your. Heike is Heike. And you will draw people who resonate with you. And that is the beauty when you accept that.
Can I just say, Vera, while you were describing the kind of very bouncy and glittery and jumping over the field in a pink dress, I thought, oh, I could never be photographed by someone like that. That would terrify me.
Yeah.
And then you described your style. I went, oh, I feel safe now. I could go to Vera because I don't like photographs being taken. I have to do videos and photographs for my work. But I have one of my best friends who's known me for, oh my goodness, longer than I'm going to share actually now. She has about 2 photographs of me because I don't go in photographs, but I would feel safe with somebody who understood that. And I went to a wedding last year, and the photographer was so, I'm going to be polite and say, full of energy in a really over the top way. And every time they came near certain groups, we all just moved and disappeared because we were terrified by what they were asking people to do. Whereas if you had somebody, and that worked for half the group, we had someone like you there as well. Actually, people who were shyer but wanted to capture and it was a beautiful moment, a beautiful ceremony. But we're not in those photographs because we didn't have somebody who understood some of the fear that might come from acting in certain ways and who we didn't resonate with that person. So I'm really pleased that you have the job that you do because there's not as many of you out there as I think there should be.
And if I may interject, that's one of the things that I gave Vera 2 labels, and those I insist on because she has a very grounding energy and she makes you feel safe. Otherwise, I would not have done the photos. Well, would not let her take photos of me because I hate photos. And I had all, what we spoke about with a bouncy unicorn and all these things. Yeah, I was always the one who fled because the energy is just like, help. That as if you were sitting in your garden and it's a beautiful weather, and all of a sudden every single thunderstorm, hailstorm, sandstorm, dust storm, whatever comes and pours down on you in 1 second. That's like, no, go away. What's going on? Get away from me. And so, yeah, Vera has this very down to earth and grounding energy, and weirdly enough, makes someone feel safe.
I can totally see that.
I even enjoy driving with her because I feel safe. And there are not many people where I feel safe when they drive.
Oh, guys, thanks. But you know what is quite funny because we do have that conversation. I really enjoy that. But funny thing is that eventually, and that was in my head, you know what? I'm maybe not this unicorn girl, but I will make a video one day. One day, I promise. Keep me. That may take some years. I will make the video with me, pinky and glitter on the fields. Just because when you surround yourself with people who support you and tell that they are thankful that you are not who you said you don't want to be, you may be brave to even try.
I love that so much. And it's, so for so many reasons, Vera. I'll look out for that video. I'll watch it.
It may take some time, but
I'm
you
patient.
never know. You never know. Do you think that is a good point to leave our dear listeners with this beautiful picture in their mind? Or maybe you will have a last word or last tip for our listeners, good self-compassion for introverts. Maybe not only for them.
I was thinking actually while you were talking, Vera, that so many things you speak about. It's why I've renamed what I'm doing for Introverts and Co. yesterday, in fact, because there are people in my community who are HSPs, highly sensitive people, who are empaths, lots of different things who don't necessarily fit the label of introvert, but would be drawn to someone like yourself or someone like Heike because of the energies that you bring with that. And I think it's the thing I keep coming back to with all of this is can we learn to embrace and love what makes us unique while also being able to reach out and share and support each other when those things that we have in common, and whether it is the introversion or whatever else it might be, that's the part I think sometimes society is missing more and more, embracing uniqueness and individuality and also reaching out, supporting each other to help on those times when life is tough, because it can be really hard. And when we are able to be open and honest and vulnerable with people, the support that we can get and that we can give is huge. And that's what I'd love people to kind of, I suppose, think about and reflect on after this.
Very well said.
She's gathering thoughts. Now the little bit of narrative. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us in our Kardamom and Chili. And that was pure pleasure.
Yeah.
And I have already few notes, then you may be dragged here back to another few episodes.
It'll be a pleasure.
Yeah, I think this could have gone on for much longer, because it's amazing what you have in your mind, how you see these things and how much time you have invested into everything. And I know that you read a lot of researches and books and everything. You enable people to unlock the understanding of what introversion and all the other things can be, and how you can make the best out of it, and how to recognize and realize where you use it maybe as an excuse to be in that situation where you just kept yourself stuck. And you've created really something absolutely beautiful there. And yeah, happy to have you again anytime. And apologies for the long episode this time, but actually, no, I'm not sorry, because it was beautiful.
I'm not sorry either. It was great. And yeah, thank you so much, Tom, for your time and energy.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure, both of you. Thank you so much for inviting me on. The first time I think you've done sort of 3 people, and I haven't done one before, I think, in this with 2 interviewers, and you've made it a really lovely, safe space. I love what you're doing, and thank you for bearing with me and me chattering on about random things. So it's been such a pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all. And we invite you to listen to the next episodes as well.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.